Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Dining Dollars and Culinary Creativity, Maximizing Flexibility and Engagement in Senior Living. My name is Brigitte Reinhardt with General Mills Food Service, and I'll be your host for today. This webinar is brought to you by General Mills, providing the food people love away from home, and we're proud to offer the trusted brands and quality products that food service professionals rely on every day. Today's session is also supported by General Mills Bell Institute of Health and Nutrition, our internal source for scientific and nutrition expertise. So before we dive in, just a few housekeeping notes. Today's webinar is being recorded and we'll have a Q&A at the end of the session. You can submit any questions at any time using the Q&A icon on the upper right corner of your screen. And at the end of the webinar, you'll receive an email with links to the slides and continuing education certificates in the coming days. So please note, approval for the Commission of Dietetics registration for CEUs was not requested for this webinar. And with that, it's my pleasure to kick off our objectives for today. Here's a quick look of what we'll be covering. We'll start with the why behind Declining Dollars, how these programs give residents more control and satisfaction, and then we'll walk through the implementation strategies from resident education to plan design and flexible spending options. And finally, we'll touch on pricing and menu optimization, how to balance your budget and use Culinary as a marketing tool. Also, we'd love to hear from you. You'll see a poll that's popped up on your screen here. Which describes your community's use of dining dollars. Thank you for participating in the poll. Next, I'm excited to introduce today's speaker for this webinar. First up, it's Anne-Marie Villarreal, Senior Director of Dining at Brio Living Services. With over 30 years of expertise, including 25 in senior living, Anne-Marie has led everything from new construction projects to innovative dining programs, even incorporating robotics into her operations. She's passionate about creating dining experiences that truly delight residents. And joining her is Chef Sonia Cure, who has been a part of General Mills' chef team since 2006. Chef Sonia brings more than 25 years of food service experience across restaurants, healthcare, and higher education. She's known for her deep expertise in recipe development, menu engineering, and product performance, and for leading engaging training sessions across the industry. Well, we are thrilled to have them both here to show how food can play a transformative role in healthcare dining. And with that, I am pleased to pass things over to Anne-Marie to kick off today's presentation.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction. And I'm thrilled to be here with you all today. So thank you so much for joining us and for participating in the poll. So it was kind of fun to see the answers, and hopefully I'll kind of help it seems many of you are not in a declining dollar program. So I hope I'm able to kind of share more information with you on the topic. So as we get started here, the why, the choice, the control, the financial value, and the flexibility. So with the choice and the control, it allows the residents to have the a la carte menu choices. So if it's a 1 meal or a 2 meal, 3 meal type of day, if they have 1 meal, they have limited options. So if they just want to come down and have a soup, they would utilize their whole meal program for that day. By switching to a declined dollar program, they're able to have soup, maybe for lunch, and then they can come down and have dinner of their choice. So it allows a little bit more control for them than for us and the dining services department there. The financial value, by adding a meal plan and a declined dollar balance, we have our known revenue with that there. And then when you have the residents who often ask, why can't we have steak more often? Why can't we have shrimp cocktail? Well, when we are balancing that budget and the financials there, the residents are able to choose if they want those higher end items, and we're able to offer that there for them. So they're the ones more managing what they're spending and how they're utilizing their dollars for their meal plan. The flexibility. So the flexibility in meal plans, it's important to have multiple dining venues be it a cafe, a coffee shop, your main dining room, ice cream shop, the flexibility. So that allows them to have more choice and more opportunities to utilize their dining dollars, as well as bakeries. So, and then also guest meals. So usually if there's a meal plan that's just a one meal plan or two meal plan, guests typically aren't able to eat off of those meal plans. Declined dollar balances, that would allow them to also include their guest meals in that option. Key implementation strategies that we'll review is the need to set your financial parameters, to define your meal plan scope, determine your accounting method, and then define your meal plan credits or your vacation credits. To do it or not to do it are all important items to review. So one by one, we'll go through those. So the financial parameters, there's a lot of different ways to set up your declined dollar balances. You can go monthly, quarterly, and then also in setting those, there's tiers. So you can have a lower tier, a medium tier, and a higher tier of what your amounts that you're setting for those. So your first tier could be maybe just almost an equivalent to one meal a day, but then they can determine how they spend their dollars. A medium tier would be 2 meals, and a higher tier might be 3 meals a day. It's all what is based. And so there's not one specific way to do it. You have to do it A, B, or C. So this is where you can really create it to what works for your community and what works for your residents and where you're at, and really create it for them. Monthly, so that would just be they have X amount of dollars to start with in the beginning of the month, be it $200 or $300 for that month. And then at the end of the month, then they need to use those dollars. And then if not, you have to decide then, how does that work? If they have $100 left over or $50 left over, do they use it or lose it? Or do you allow it to roll over and allow them to take that extra $50 over into the next month? And if you allow the rollovers, then when does that expire? And what is the maximum of where they reach in order to be able to roll those amounts over? For us and for in our communities, we utilize a quarterly balance. And so by using a quarterly balance, they're able to utilize their dollars for that 3-month time period, however that they would like. So sometimes they might be gone for a week, but that allows them that they have other time during that time span to utilize their dollars more because they're gone during that week's time. If they're gone for a weekend, then they're able to maybe invite a friend to dinner, have a family dinner over with the holidays. So there's multiple ways for them to utilize those dollars. At the end of the quarter, it's a use it or lose it kind of situation. And so that is something that you need to educate and share and communicate very clearly with the residents. If they don't use it, then they lose it. But there's also ways to where you can also do a rollover as well for quarters. Staggering dates is another item to consider as you're setting up your parameters of the time frames. So I've done it both ways. We've done just your calendar quarters, so January to March, and then April to June. So you can go through and follow those. We've also staggered it in different groups of residents. So not everybody is exhausting their dollars, or their quarters aren't all ending at the same time. And I know other communities also might have different dates of when their monthly time frame ends, to kind of help with that balance of the residents that might be in a rush to utilize their dollars before the end of their time frame. So there's a lot of things in there to consider and to think about, and just making sure. So for us and the community in which we tried it, it created more confusion by having staggered dates. Residents just trying to help them understand when their quarter ended. And so we really just, everyone sticks to that same quarter and utilizing their dollars there. It's also important that with your financial parameters to really have a point of sale system. A point of sale system will help you track and keep track of your declined dollars of the residents with that, and just their spending. With your point of sale system, you would be able to run reports. So you're going to be able to track throughout that time frame who's using their decline dollars and who is not. When you're starting out, it's really important to kind of run those reports and follow up with the residents if they're not using it. Really having those one-on-one meetings with them and asking them, how can we help you? Why aren't you, dining with us? How can we help you utilize your dollars? Some are, might just not be interested in dining, and then others, you can really build a wonderful relationship with them, help them get down to the dining room and get them integrated with other residents, and really help them find that socialization that dining really brings to the table for them. Um, so then also with that, so all of these decisions are really important to make in the beginning, before you continue on, to really have a clear outline of what your plan is, of what you're doing, making sure that you know your variables. So if it's going to be a quarterly decline balance, your financial will be, it'll vary. Your first month of that quarter, you won't have typically a huge revenue base. Your second quarter or your second month of the quarter, you might have some residents that might have exhausted their decline dollars and now they're starting up on an incline. And then your third quarter, then your third month, your third month, we typically see a large increase of revenue from residents who have exhausted their decline dollars. And now it's pure revenue because they're just buying their items a la carte outside of what they have as their determined pre-spend of the decline dollars. So that's an important item to consider in doing that. But the tracking and the accuracy of the tracking also comes with your team members, making sure that they're bringing the items into the point of sale correctly, making sure that your pricing is also entered into the system correctly as well, and making sure that all those things are communicating, which can all be managed through a point of sale system. As we look at the meal plan scope, of just what to include into that. And again, this is really based on your community and what your goals are and what you're looking for. So variety of different communities, everybody does it a little bit differently. Food, obviously, in your dining room, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Hair salons also have been included in decline dollar spends in communities I've seen. We do not in the communities in which I oversee. Many markets as well. People also include those in that meal plan scope. We operate ours separately. Guest meals to include those. So again, there's multiple ways to do guest meals. Guest meals can be included. I've seen other communities do an upcharge for guest meals of like a $5 upcharge, etc., with that operation. So just a lot of options as you're looking at and developing your meal plan. And then catering. So catering, some communities also allow catering to be a part of the decline dollars. We opt to have that as a separate revenue piece, and we really want to focus our team members in the dining program on dining. So we're very focused on the dining rooms and what we're doing there with our menus and the different restaurants in which we offer to the residents. So catering is a separate entity and not included for us in our meal plan or in the decline dollars. But again, an option for you if that's something that your community wants to do. Delivery charges, we do allow this to be deducted out of decline dollars. And again, some communities do not allow decline dollars to be charged for the deliveries. It's just another option and a good one to review and consider as you're building that. So the accounting method. many places have the decline dollars, but there's also different vocabulary verbiage that is used as well. So there's decline dollars. So people have that set $300 per month to utilize in dining services. Some people use a point system. And so they might say you have 500 points to spend or to utilize in dining services. And so they take the dollars out of that. And then some people will also use meal credits. So the point system, to me, a lot of people kind of use that as like a 2-to-1 ratio almost. And so if the meal is an $8 meal, then it's going to be 4 points. And so it's almost an additional calculation that you do on top of, you'll break through and you'll do your food costs and what that costs. And then you've got to do another calculation for a point system to avoid the word dollars. And so there are some communities that are sensitive about using the word dollars. But I also, residents will end up referring to it as dollars. I have experienced anyway, at the end of it, if you still are trying to use the, say, points, they'll say dollars. I like being transparent. And so in our communities, we just we utilize the word dollars and use the decline dollar verbiage there. When we're setting our price points on our menus, we are using a 35 to 40% food cost calculation in there. Therefore, that's including our direct and indirect costs into the cost of that meal. And so then that is also still the same price in which team members and guests are paying. So it's just one price across the board. And that's the structure in which we have set up. You can, run with a different food cost as well, but that's the basis of how we calculate that item there. So the meal credits, so this parameter here, it's really set to your food cost. So that's where it might be with dinner, you get 7 items. And so it might be you get a starter and a soup, you get an entree, you get 2 sides, you get a dessert, you get 2 drinks with that. And so that's almost kind of like a countdown to where you're not able to order things a la carte type of way with that. So credits. So residents often go, their summers, they might go to a cottage, or the winters, they might go somewhere warm, all depending on where you're at. And they'll often ask about credits. Well, I'm not here, because then they do see the dollars and they say, well, I'm going to lose $300 a month because I'm gone. And so then they'll often ask, well, do I get a credit for being gone? And this is handled, again, every community does things differently. And so these are all your options to have there. So it's, if you allow it, do they need to be gone 30 days? Do they need to be gone 14 days? What is that time frame that you would allow for them to be gone to allow them a credit? Because oftentimes they would be able to utilize their dollars still. If they're gone for 2 weeks, they still have an opportunity to utilize their declined dollars during the time frame of their dining dollars. And then it's also managing that. It's getting the communications from the residents. I'm going to be gone from this time to this time. It's also confirming that they were gone during that time, and then making sure you're submitting it. So there's also a lot of office work that goes along with that as you consider allowing credits to be done. And then also, if you allow a credit, how much of that credit do you give back to the residents? So they see $300, they want the $300, but the $300, you still have expenses that the department accrues, even if a few residents are gone. And so doing a full credit is really not recommended, because you're giving away your dollars in your budget. 50% still, there's a loss if you do the food cost, and then it's just a portion of that $300. Then it's also trying to explain that back to the resident of why it's not dollar for dollar back, and then going through that process. We've recently gone through, we have a lower set decline dollar balance is what we utilize with the residents. So We do not, we've grandfathered a few residents in for the vacation credits, but moving forward for the last 3 years, any new resident moving in, there is no longer a vacation credit that is allowed. Other options residents will share with you is that they have health restrictions, they're not able to participate in the meal plan. We really have found a way to work with the health restrictions in which the residents present to us. We've had residents that are on a liquid-only diet. We work with them and utilize their decline dollars and provide them with Ensure or their choice of protein supplements. We've really done a good job with that. We've had other residents that might need soft foods, and so we review the menus with them and help them see the options of the soft food choices and or see what else we can do to help them. And then also we've had some spouses that have gone on to hospice and might need pureed. So we've worked with them on those items there. And it's just really, working with them, helping them out through those items. So and then the absences, vacations, and illnesses. And so just going through that and having a talk in your community and with your administrator, the director of the campus, and just talking about what you want to have and set for your residents in your community. So the decline dollar plan will review the menu optimization, end of the quarter spending, meal plan usage, and themed events are just other key points to review as you take a look and consider a decline dollar plan. So menu optimization, again, we talked about the pricing structure using, you can restaurant structure of a 20% or a 35, 40% food cost, and just really costing it out like a standard restaurant. Your menu design of what you're looking at there, you're going to want to utilize, cross utilization of products across your campus with your menus when you have multiple dining restaurants, making sure you're not double offering items. And so utilizing specialties in each of those dining venues to pull your customers and your residents into those areas, and having those concepts and those features out there to draw them in. We've worked really closely with our marketing department and really we're advertising, we're marketing to our residents, we're pulling them in. We're not taking them for granted because they have a decline dollar program. We never want our residents to say, oh, we have to dine with you because we have a decline dollar balance. We're not doing a good job with our program if that's what our residents are saying. So we want them to feel like they get to. When we have guests coming in, we know we're doing a good job to us and trying to keep it fresh in the dining rooms. It can get mundane if you're going to the same restaurant every day, even when you have multiple venues. You still need to pull them in. You need to keep it fresh and fun for them. And so then that's where some of the theme meals and just marketing ideas come into play. And then the participation and usage. And I mentioned this briefly already, but it's really important to monitor the residents and take a look and run your reports of who's using their decline dollars and who's not. I found the bottom providers or the bottom participants participating in it we'll sit down, we'll review things with them, and it's just not an option that they're interested in. It's the middle people. It's the people in the middle that you can really kind of work with and talk to, learn from. How do we get you to utilize our dining program more? How can we get you to, use it fully? Because that's our goal. We don't want people to leave money on the table. So what can we do to make sure that they're utilizing it and feeling the value from that dining program? And so that's our goal was always to have 85% participation, and we really find a 95 to 98% participation with our dining program. So we feel that we have a great success with that. And then just really kind of checking in with our residents and making sure that they are finding a way to utilize that. So your end of quarter spend, again, I touched upon, I really want to touch upon it some more here. So your end of quarter spend or your end of month spend. It's understanding. So some residents will all of a sudden, ooh, I got to spend my dining dollars and I don't want to leave anything on the table. They start to come in and they start to grocery shop, and your kitchen and your staff are not prepared for, you know, residents coming and buying a case of Coke or buying, 2 dozens of muffins that isn't a typical day. So those are things that we have communicated with residents, that it's not meant to be, we're not meant to be a grocery store for them to come and to utilize mass amounts of things in the last 3 days of their time. And so through time and being and working with the residents and reminding them ahead of time and keeping an eye on who's used it and who hasn't, we've really been able to be successful in helping the residents utilize their dollars. You'll have an increased amount of reservations at the end of the quarter or month. And so we know that. And so we'll staff accordingly for that. Just like in another restaurant, if you know you're going to be busy, then you're going to increase your staffing. If it's a slow night, then you might be able to staff down. And then other ideas, and I know other communities to do it, is a fixed amount spend per day. So maybe it's only $75 per day can a resident spend. So then if that case of Coke fits into that $75 spend for the day, then that would be allowed. So there's a lot of unique ways that you can allow for that spending, and it's just on what you're able to support as a department and as a community. And your point of sale systems often can also help set those parameters and track those spend per day parameters in there as well. Some communities allow a donation of food to the local food bank as well. So there's a lot of options that you can have in looking at that to kind of help manage your end of quarter spends. I just want to go back here. So it is when you have your increased reservations, it is important to, we have found it important to schedule extra staffing on those days. So you can almost double or triple the amount of reservations that you have at the end of the quarter. And so just to help acknowledge that to the staff that it is a busier day, it's important to make sure you've got your morale of your team members there. Okay. Meal plan usage. I shared this earlier, just the target participation is at 85%. Our experience is at 95 to 98%. And then just again, that low participation, reaching out to them and then working with them. I think sometimes we found that they didn't know they could have the food delivered to them. And so that makes a world of difference as well. And then the specialty events of kind of keeping it fun and fresh. That's the themed events. That's the themed events of baseball opening day, Super Bowl, World Series, Kentucky Derby. Maybe it's a Pirates dinner. Maybe it's just a pasta night and you've got a couple different stations in the dining room of pastas that are set up and different chefs that are in there preparing little at the different stations. We've started monthly focuses. And so just kind of say September's apple season. And so we've got to focus on apples once a month or once a week. We'll have a dinner that's featuring an apple flavor to that. October is a harvest theme. November, we're featuring family recipes and resident recipes. And so just another way to draw the residents in, to create some excitement there with that. Buffets, just offering up different items. They like going through buffets, offering them a buffet. And then holiday meals also are a big pull into the dining room for a good participation as well. Other items we've done are trivia nights in the dining room. And again, nothing really special with the menu, just something fun happening in the dining room, some kind of buzz to bring them into that dining room and bring that community together. So implementing the new structure. There's two different ways which I've been a part of implementing the dining decline dollars. We had a meal program that was a 1 meal, 2 meal, 3 meals a day, and then we turned it into dining dollars. And so that was inspired by residents. Oh, I didn't eat my meal yesterday. Can I have 2 today? And we couldn't do that. It was your 1 meal was yesterday and it didn't have that carryover basis. Or I missed my meal yesterday. My daughter's here. Can she eat my meal from yesterday? Guests weren't allowed to eat off of that program. So that was the inspiration for us to change to decline dollars at that time. I've also been a part in some communities to where they had no meal plan. So the residents would just come down if they chose to dine, or maybe they chose not to dine. So there's no meal plan at all, just a complete separate operation. And then we implemented a meal plan and dining dollars for those residents. And so they saw that increase to their monthly bill. So they felt that they didn't want a meal plan. And so it was mixed reviews. And so the way that we were able to do this to be successful is it was communication and communication and communication. And so our corporate president, vice president, they came, spoke to the residents, shared the change and the why with that. And then dining, we came in and talked about what it's going to mean to have a meal plan. What's it going to be? What's it going to mean to have dining services and the things that we're going to offer, or dining times, and what we're going to be able to offer to them. And just being very transparent, allowing them to ask us the hard questions and talking through those questions with them and working with them. So lots of memos, lots of meetings, but also we did a lot of culinary demos. So about 3 months, for 3 months leading up to the start of the meal plans, we did weekly culinary demos with the residents. We built relationships with the residents before they ever stepped into the dining room, before the meal plan ever became available. So they knew what our standards were. They were tasting our food. So they knew that it was quality food. They knew what we were going to be serving them. We talked with them. We learned, because we didn't know either if what they liked, what they didn't like. So it was a great interaction and relationship that we really have built with them, of just understanding, what do you want in the dining room? What do you want on your menus? And then building that through that. So on the first day, they already knew who the chef was. They knew who the front of the house manager was. They knew the director. And so it was great. And it was very successful. And so a lot of the feedback was, I didn't want this, but this is great. This is wonderful. And we really appreciate this. And so it was very, it went smooth. So it was nice. It was a relief with that. And so by having that trust, and we just make sure, we don't take that relationship for granted, and we really continue that relationship that we built, and checking in. We had monthly dining update meetings with them, letting know what's going on, and transparent. This isn't working well, so we tried this. That was a bad night, so we're going to, we're not going to do that again. Or we're going to, try this differently. We're going to try a different recipe. And having that real relationship with the residents is important and rewarding, all in one with that. So with that, I would like to share and introduce Chef Sonia. And Chef has prepared several different ways and ideas to offer residents various options to enjoy in their meal plans and their declined dollars. So please enjoy.
Hi, everybody. That was just such a great segment that we just watched, and I wanted to play off of those concepts and talk to you about, well, how can you enhance your bakery offerings, help you with that spend down in your dining dollars. And so one of the things I wanted to approach was kind of like a three-pronged aspect. We're going to do bakery case, plated desserts, and then kind of like mini bites for either catering or just in general. And so I'm a little bit frugal, because if you want to help make money, then you also want to reduce how much money you spend. So we're going to focus on like what ingredients you already have in-house. So I decided just to start with two things that are always in my building. I have cake mix and I have butter. So for 1 box of mix and 1 pound of butter, I'm going to make a bunch of desserts for you today. So if you mix those together, just soft mix them, they come together like a streusel. So that's really great as a muffin topping. You can also use it on top of dessert bars. If you keep mixing it, it becomes a shortbread cookie dough. So I have some offerings here that show you can make bars, jumbo cookies, smaller cookies. But sometimes the labor needed to like scoop and go is a bit prohibitive. So I want to give you permission to go ahead and make icebox style cookies. This is where we actually stir in the solid ingredients into the batter, press it into a sheet pan, and then we can just cut them. So one batch makes 196 cookies, but it's much easier to cut the dough than to scoop 196 cookies. So today I actually have a cranberry and pistachio, and then I have an orange and apricot, just so that we can see that you can actually get more than one mix even in the same pan. We just spaced it out. So in today's selection, we rolled them, we pressed them into molds, and then topped them off with a little bit of mousse. I rolled some actually into a lot, like in parchment paper or even in plastic wrap, freeze it, bring it back out, and then actually cut them into coins. You can also, if you want, enhance that by rolling that into colored sugar, okay? And that way you could have a different one for each occasion, so, you know, different celebration of the month. And then we did a chocolate cake mix, or actually devil's food cake mix with white chocolate chips. Here we kind of did a kitchen sink, everything cookie, but I did some in jumbo. So like for your bakery case, sometimes you just want to have individually wrapped. Maybe it's near your cash register, maybe it's near your coffee station, but this is an easy grab and go. And so what's easier if you can just grab it, put it in your basket. So thinking about that, as we move on, remember I said that it makes a shortbread cookie dough? So that means that now you can actually use it as a base for bars. So for me, this is about using, what do I have in my fridge? Do I have jam? Do I have pumpkin pie filling? Do I have things that are open and just there? This is a great way to use stuff up. So in this top row, we actually did a cheesecake bar. We did that same shortbread crust. We made just a basic cheesecake filling. You can do it as a no-bake or you can do it with eggs, whatever you want. And then we put more streusel on top, so you have a texturized bar. You can add toppings or not. The next one, we actually did an apple orchard bar. This is just apple pie filling, that same crust. And for the topical, you can either add 1 egg or you can add 2 tablespoons water, and then it comes together like a sugar cookie dough. So it gives you almost like a cloud-like texture on top of the bar instead of having, you know, the crumb of streusel. The next one is actually a raspberry princess bar. That one, just raspberry jam. Okay, you got orange marmalade, whatever else you got floating around there, knock it out. You can add oats or nuts if you want, but if you don't have it, 3 ingredients, we have some. And then inspired by magic bars, a personal favorite. There we actually used the devil's food cake again, made the shortbread. We also, you'll find on the website, we do have the same recipe. It's called like almost a candy bar. That one uses brownie mix as the base. The one we have at the bottom, we did pumpkin filling. We didn't do any eggs in it. We actually just have the pumpkin and sugar. The topical is the same streusel, but we ground up some chocolate chips and a little bit of cinnamon in it, so we're just calling it a Mexican chocolate bar. But you think like, well, okay, how am I going to take these bars and turn them into a plated dessert? Great question. So in that one, we took those apple orchard bars, served them warm, had some vanilla ice cream, little hot caramel sauce, some candy pecans, and I think that counts as a plate of dessert. So that's where we're going to stop for right now. Just in this segment, we're talking about cake mix as cookies and bars. On this next segment, I want to talk to you about using cake mix well as designed. So we're going to make cake mix into batter, okay? Now, follow the instructions on the box. Cake mix, add the water, mix the prescribed amount, and then what do you do at that point? It's up to you to how much you want to scale into the pan. Now, depending on which directions you followed, you should have between 8 pounds of batter, 8 pounds, 8 ounces worth of batter, okay? So that means a full sheet pan should take 8 pounds of batter. I did these in quarter sheets, so I just want you to see the difference where I'm going. Up front, I deposited 8 ounces of batter in my pan, then 1 pound of batter, then 2 pounds of batter, and then 4 pounds of batter. Okay, so I want you to see the difference in the height. The reason why I did that is sometimes when you bake the cake, it becomes really difficult to slice it evenly if you're going to use it for layers, or if you use it directly the way that you baked it and then stack the layers, and sometimes you get a really large cake, and sometimes that's just too much, it doesn't fit on your plate. So I wanted to give you permission that you can actually change the scaling. You will have to cut back the bake time a bit. So let's go to the other extreme. We're actually going to overload the pan. We're going to use a pan extender. Okay, so on that full sheet pan, we're using a pan extender, but we're going to put 10 pounds of batter in that pan. That's going to give us a mile-high cake. Disclaimer, I did bake it in a standard oven, so that way it didn't crown or dome, and it gives you that nice mile-high square, because sometimes you just want a cake square. No fuss, no mess. And when I do those, because it's a lot of cake, I tend to use the whipped frosting, okay? Because that way you can just pipe it on with frosting, or if you flat ice it, then you can just run a fork through it to texturize. But look, if you go with the smaller batch, we can actually do bar cakes, and in those torts, we put some lemon curd in the center, some fresh blueberries. We did mask it with the frosting on the side. That's actually our whipped topping. And then we put some chocolate shavings, but you can use sprinkles, you can use cake crumbs, as long as it's fully baked. Okay, any of those things that you actually even have trim. Okay, so that way you can use all of that. Up front, you'll see we did a strawberry layer. That one is the strawberry yogurt mousse, and we only did the 2-pound layers, and that one is listed as a level 5 for the minced and moist, and that recipe's on the website as well. What if you want to go, wow? Okay, that's where we actually did the chocolate and the yellow cake. We did a chocolate and peanut butter fudge frosting. That's why we have the peanuts on top, letting you know the allergen. Okay, you can go big and bold, but that's a really big serving. Okay, so you can slice it really thin, and so just thinking about that, that's where you get like those fancy bar torts, because it's just like the ones that you could buy online, except you made it yourself. Okay, we have the big and bold. I do want to tell you that like you can also tint or flavor your frosting. So here we did some swirl. In this occasion, it's kind of like angel food. You could just cut the square, put a little frosting on the side, maybe garnish fresh fruit, maybe not, you know, a little pineapple might be nice. Okay, as we go into cupcakes and bars too, this one we did a devil's food cake layer at the bottom. We did a coconut frosting and then garnished it with ganache. Wonderful bite size, very rich. Okay, these we stirred in orange jello into the mix before we made it, just the powder, not prepared jello. And then we just had some dollar store fancy liners that we got. Here we did a salted caramel with a itty bitty tiny mini pretzel in there because that sounded yummy today. And then again, seasonal cupcake liners, okay? Just play with it, whatever you can find, but it adds that visual appeal in your bakery case. As we move forward, I want to show you too. Here we did like a key lime swirl, that same orange jello, just with whipped topping. Here we went jumbo with the liners. It's a devil's food cake, whipped topping, and some shavings. We did salted caramel with toasted coconut. And then last but not least, we did those chocolate bonbons to go. This is definitely going to be a shareable that residents are going to want to take back to their rooms and work on that for a while. Okay, we'll see you in a minute with our next segment. In this next segment, we actually talked about cake as cookies and bars. We talked cake as like bar cake layers. Now I want to say, okay, so how can you get it to fancy? Okay, so let's think about tiramisu. Year round, kind of makes you think like you're going to the restaurant, okay? So it's got that fancy vibe already. So the first one I want to show you, we're still featuring cake. So we have cake as the shortbread layer. Then we have a dulce de leche filling. Then we have a cake sponge that we soaked with a Kahlua syrup. Then we actually have the mascarpone cheese layer, topped it off with the cocoa. Now, that said, this is really, really fantastic. It's indulgent, it has wonderful textures. But it's got like 40 steps and almost 30 ingredients, and it might take you a minute to make it. Okay, if you're having a special event, please try it because it is that fantastic. It is worth it, okay? But if you don't have that much time, okay, we need to consider skill as an ingredient in what we're offering because that's also part of our cost, okay, if we can't invest that much time. So let's go to the other extreme and say, all right, we're actually going to start with a fully baked brownie this time. We're going to poke holes in it and do a coffee syrup to soak the brownie. And then we're going to do a mascarpone cheese on top and then dust it with cocoa. And then you can still cut that into a bar, whatever you want. But look, we took it down to 4 ingredients, okay? And then you can cut it, keep it in the freezer, do it when you need it, okay? So I want to show you, you also have options, okay? You can cut any shape, size. You pick the portion that works for you. It can be just a topical. It doesn't need to be fancy layers, okay? You still get all the flavors that define tiramisu. But I hear you out there, you're telling me, Chef, but if I cut all these, I'm gonna have like a ton of trim. What do I do with that? I can't waste that. You're absolutely right. Okay, so we're gonna take you all the way to this other side. We're gonna go all the way down at the bottom. Okay, we're making a tiramisu trifle. Okay, so we have the same core ingredients. We added a little whipped topping too to just give it a little relief on the density. And we also added a little bit of a raspberry swirl in there. Okay, so that's not traditionally tiramisu, but just to give you a little boost. I'm gonna give you 3 different presentations. Okay, some of those still might be a bit big for your audience, but definitely restaurant worthy. You get the wow with the trim. Okay, so it's a way to use it up. I'm going to take you one step over. Okay, we're taking the brownie mix, we're making a coffee swirl, stir that in, and now you got brownie bites. If we go one step more, okay, we're actually doing a mocha. So instead of just using traditional water in the brownie mix, we're actually doing cooled coffee in the brownie mix, and then we're also still doing instant coffee in the powder, in the mascarpone layer. Okay, so again, 4 ingredients. Take it down to bite size. What can you handle? What is the labor that you have available? What works for you? So depending on what plate presentation style, you can still do, carry-out items. We still do bites that are available. And you can't forget, okay, I did some cupcakes because with the bakery case, we still need to have some wow. So we have some seasonal liners. We did the chocolate covered coffee beans, okay. Definitely tells you, oh, that's a coffee flavored cupcake. So that way, not just mocha, coffee, okay. But we also did it in bars with toppings. So this is tiramisu 5 ways. Which one do you like? So thanks for joining us today. I just want to remind you, we made a whole lot of things with our cake mix. We hinted and introduced brownie mix as well for our tiramisu designs. We also wanted to make sure that you balance your bakery case. Have at least one more item in there, so we threw in some croissants at the last minute. And don't forget, you can go both sweet and savory in your offerings. So just kind of thinking about what do you have in inventory. And feel free, take permission to go ahead and use whatever you have, toppings, make it interactive. You can start with plain cupcakes and let people add their own toppings. Do it as like family event. Maybe the grandkids come to visit. So it's just one more way that we're going to go ahead and just look across the table at all the things that you can make and all the ways that you can menu it.
All right. Thank you so much, Anne Marie and Chef Sonia, for being so generous with your time and knowledge today. I, for one, am feeling super inspired by this presentation. And next, we'll move on to our interactive session of this webinar is our Q&A session. Again, feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A button, and if you haven't done so already. But first, we'll move on to the first question here. How much time do your managers spend helping or explaining decline balances with the residents?
So thank you very much for the question and wonderful ideas, Chef Sonia. So thank you so much. I know that in our communities, we have residents that are really looking for bite-sized desserts. So there's a lot of great ideas to be able to utilize that, as well as all the display case and pastry displays from our bakery to our grab and goes and our grill. So thank you so much for those wonderful ideas. For the question, the time that our managers spend helping and explaining the decline dollars to our residents, it varies. So when you first start the program, there'll be more time that is spent reviewing, assuring, and explaining those balances with the residents. But now, and just depending too on the size of your community. So a size of a community from 200 to 300 residents, I would say only about 2 hours a week. There might be a question here or there, or less. It just depends. So it's really an average of where that's at. A lot of questions come at the end of that time frame, of the end of the month or end of the quarter. They'll be asking, "What's my balance?" or "What do I have left?" or and answering those questions. But we find that we have those relationships, so they feel comfortable in coming to us and asking us, and so we never want them to feel that we want them to utilize their dollars, and I'm glad that they feel comfortable to do that, and that's an important piece with that relationship with your residents.
I love that. Okay, so next question. For communities with smaller back of house teams, where should they start when trying to simplify their menus?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. The first one is just, how many people do you have to work with? Do you have one? It's just trying to think, how much are you asking that person to do? Is that same person doing your bake shop, your breakfasts, your hot food, any mise en place, all your soups from scratch? We need to come up for air and be reasonable about what we can ask from each group. So start with the lowest hanging fruit. Sometimes it's as simple as, okay, we're going to have pie on Mondays and Thursdays. We're going to have cookies on this day, and then we're going to have cake on this day. Okay. Sometimes you really need to go that core in your breakdown. But I would actually ask the residents first and say, okay, we want to be able to offer you a variety. Are there certain things that you guys are looking for that you would appreciate most? If everybody hates cookies, it makes no sense to make those. Okay. Sometimes you can buy stuff ready-made. Yeah, maybe it's more, but if you need to focus on your center of the plate first, because that's your biggest money investment for back of the house, then that's where we're going to focus first. So I think really it has to be unit by unit, case by case. What are you facing as far as staffing? Is it whether it's turnover, whether it's just I have an incomplete team because we had some turnover. So thinking about, and then ask your team too. Do you think you could take on something new if we did it together? So, because sometimes as long as you train them, sometimes they're willing to take on something new. I used to ask my cooks, do you have any windows of time that look like if I needed 30 minutes a week for you to work on baked goods, what does that look like? Maybe that's only cake. But I think it really is going to depend on each unit to assess what skill you have available and how many people you have, because we need to focus on center of the plate first. Everything else is nice to have, but we always want to include something nice too. Anne-Marie, go ahead.
Oh, I think you did a great job. So
Awesome. Well, we do have another question. So the question is, are the recipes for the baked goods that were discussed available anywhere for reference?
Yes.
I actually can help answer that question, James. We are going to be emailing all the recipes that Chef Sonia have discussed in the demo. So you'll be receiving that in the email along with your CEU credits at the end of this webinar in the coming days. So more to come for that.
Yeah. If it's sent as a PDF, you can actually the actual link to drive you to the website is at each and every recipe that's on there for you.
Yeah, Chef Sonia was so kind to put that all together, so I'm really excited that we're able to provide that. That is also another thing that we can give at the end of this webinar to take away from as well. And do you guys have a favorite event or menu idea that has really resonated with residents in senior living? Any
Wow.
takeaways?
They really like the community and coming together. Really any kind of theme meal that we put together, any special thing that we share with them. It's just, that's really, I think, kind of why we're all into food service, is that we really like bringing that smile to the faces of our guests. And so anything that we can do, that's why we do it. So it really is. It's the most recently we did the trivia night. It's the small things, and the small things make a difference in everything. So
Yeah, get your activities team involved, help them pay for all the
all the
periphery to decorate the
decorations, yeah.
dining
Get
room.
them to decorate the
You know,
dining room so you can
that's right.
focus in the back of the house and get those. But it's also our team members and our wait staff. They have fun getting dressed up. And just even for Halloween, everyone really got into Halloween this year. And so the team members were getting dressed up and changing the menus up, and some fun desserts that were out there and presented. So and that was really driven by the team members. So they wanted to do that for the residents, and it's great because you really become a part of the residents' families. And so they love to see those, everyone having fun and getting dressed up, and you'll get them to dress up down in the dining room as well. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, just consider too that, especially if, whether it's through residence council or just even, the interactions among the group, if you send out surveys ahead too, or even part of your interactions when you're walking the dining room floor, to just say, hey, we have this event coming up. We'd like to pick 2 or 3 people and find out, well, what does your family do for these? So then each month you're kind of like featuring a resident and what their family did. So it kind of brings it full center. It lets them kind of, be king or queen for a day because their items were featured. Maybe they can talk with their friends about, well, oh, this is what we did. But just having that ability to include those interactions and just makes it so much more personal. And it gives you fresh content. Who knows? This might be something you put on your menu permanent.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, both of you. I think we have room for one more question today. So what is one key piece of advice that you'd give to a community just starting to explore this kind of program?
I would just think it through thoroughly, really kind of go through those key points in which I reviewed and discussed, and just have those things defined before you get started, and just being comfortable with what you're doing and making sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And then just bringing people into that process, and just kind of sharing it and going through that process together.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, both of you guys, for the chance for us to kind of talk through this topic here. And thank you all for the questions. This will conclude our Q&A session. So we're almost at the end of our session. So I want to say thank you so much for the time today. You will be receiving an email in the coming days that will include links to the slides presented today, as well as your continuing education credits. So be sure to check your spam folder. And in addition, please make sure to visit generalmillsfoodservice.com for information on rebates or helpful marketing tools, videos, and new item launches. Lastly, we'll love to stay connected with you guys. So check out General Mills Food Service and the Bell Institute of Health and Nutrition on social media, and sign up for our newsletter to stay in the loop for any future CEU webinars that we'll have later on. So that concludes today's program. Thank you again for joining us. Hope you're leaving inspired and energized to transform your senior living dining and make residents smile every day. So you may now disconnect. Have a
Thank
lovely
you.
day.
Thank you.